All right, here we are, everybody. Welcome to another WDC Facebook Live. Hopefully it's not showing the last 4 minutes I spent setting all this up and talking to myself. That would be embarrassing. It's just me clicking around on my phone. Other than that, I think we've got all the technical issues figured out. We have been making progress on this. We've been having a lot of fun setting up these Facebook Lives and deciding what topics to cover and hearing from all of you who are tuning in to watch us and hearing your feedback and what you'd like to see us talk about. So again, if you have anything that you really want to know about whales, any burning questions, let us know in the comments or send us a message and we'll get something scheduled. Today we're going to be talking about policy. I convinced Sabrina to let me do a policy talk so that I can help share a little bit of information, maybe untangle the complicated web of policy. I'm Colleen Weiler. I'm the Jessica Rekos Fellow at Whale and Dolphin Conservation, and a lot of my work focuses around policy. So this is an area near and dear to my heart, and I get really excited about it, and I want other people to get really excited about it, but I know that it can be a really confusing and intimidating topic. So hopefully today we're going to kind of break it down and show that it's not as scary or intimidating as a lot of people think that it is, and give you guys some really good ways that you can get involved and provide some really basic background information and take that intimidation element out of it. And I'm just checking in again to make sure that technology is all good, making sure that we're good to go, giving people a few minutes to join in. If you've been joining us for a lot of these talks, welcome back, glad to have you. If you're new, welcome. We're also glad to have you. Again, we've been having a lot of fun doing these and talking to people from all over the place and really connecting with our supporters. It's been a really interesting way to keep doing our education and outreach and work and yeah, it's been fun to figure out, and again to do different topics and find out what people want to know. So sounds like we're all good. So I'm going to jump in. We're going to start talking about policy, cover some basics, what exactly we mean when we talk about policy, why it's important, and how you are actually already involved in policy, whether or not you realize it. Again, I know that it can be an intimidating topic, and there's a lot of terms, there's a lot of abbreviations and acronyms and laws. So please don't leave, stick with us. I'm also going to throw in some fun whale pictures for little whale brain breaks and keep everybody entertained and with us with pretty pictures. Policy is ultimately a public process. It's driven by and for the people. So it's a really important thing, and it really, it's a lot of what WDC does and a lot of what we rely on for our supporters to get involved in as well. We're not going to go too far into the deep end of the policy pool today. We're going to stick with the basics and just kind of lay some groundwork so that if you see us posting or talking about certain things, you're going to be a couple of steps ahead and know what we're talking about. So first, I want to say Happy Earth Day to everybody. I hope everyone had a chance to get outside and do the 50 for 50 challenge yesterday. I'm going to do mine today. It was pouring rain here in Oregon where I live yesterday. So I was a little bit of I stayed inside, but I'm going to get out and do mine today a little bit better. Yesterday was the 50th anniversary of Earth Day and actually connects to this policy talk really well, because a lot of the laws and things that we're going to talk about today were started after this first celebration of Earth, and it really inspired some of the changes that help to protect our shared planet. So pretty cool connection. All right, here's your first awesome whale picture to help keep everybody with us and connects us into making a splash for policy. Yay. All right, so first up, what am I talking about when I say policy? What exactly does that mean? So policy is a course of action, let's say goals, that are adopted by a government, a business, an individual, or some organization to achieve a specific set of outcomes. It can happen at the federal and state level, or it can be more local to cities or counties, and can even go international with treaties and agreements between countries. We're going to focus on US policy today, since that's most of where our work here in the North American office focuses on. But just know that policy can be as localized as something that your city, your community does, or as broad as a treaty that the entire US is involved in. So for example, WDC, our kind of overarching policy goal is to get protection for all whales and dolphins and recovery for the most vulnerable populations. And to do that, we focus in on laws and regulations and measures that affect whales, dolphins, or the environment that supports them and lets them live. And that can involve analysis of policies that already exist and trying to improve them and make them better, or developing and supporting new policies that can have better protection for whales and dolphins. And why is all this important? Why is policy such a big deal? Policy is how we change laws and regulations and create lasting and meaningful protection to help whales, dolphins, their habitat, and our shared ecosystem. So for everyone who listened in to our talk on whale poop a couple weeks ago and remembers how important that is just for the overall health of our ecosystem and how it can help our entire planet, we think whales are really important and we want to keep them around. And to do that, we have to have good, strong, and meaningful protections in place to make sure that we do have whales and dolphins around. So the entire mission statement for WDC, our world's a world where every whale and dolphin is safe and free, is important because we believe that it sustains the future of the Earth. So we think whales are pretty important, and policy helps to keep them around. So some examples of some of the different areas that we work in. Policy and protection can be something that applies directly to whales and dolphins and physically interacts with them. So for example, to protect North Atlantic right whales from vessel strikes, a policy of shifting shipping lanes in and out of Boston to protect them from that threat, or protecting the habitat of southern resident orcas and increasing prey abundance by making sure rivers and streams that support salmon, which is the food for southern resident orcas, are protected. So it's both protecting whales and dolphins themselves, as well as the habitats and the ecosystems that support them. And policy often happens behind the scenes, but everything that we do here at WDC really supports and feeds back into that policy work. So education and outreach, talking to people about whales and dolphins and how amazing they are and how important they are, hopefully inspires people to get involved and to love whales and dolphins as much as we do, and join us in speaking up for policy actions. Conducting research and supporting research that we have the best possible information to know what whales and dolphins need to survive and to thrive, and how we can help get them what they need. And then doing the policy work itself. So speaking up for making sure that the regulations and laws are in place and are positive for whales and dolphins. So all of this comes back into, again, making those positive changes and helping whales and dolphins to survive and to thrive. So a lot of policy work happens behind the scenes. You may have seen memes like this in your social media talking about the different perspectives of careers or jobs. Personally, I don't think this one is 100% accurate for marine biologists. There's a lot of different ways that people can get involved in marine biology. It doesn't have to be all of this, but if you narrow it down to just this part, it's pretty accurate for marine mammal policy. Policy work is not super glamorous. We're not, scuba diving or on a tropical beach somewhere. It is a lot of time in front of the computer, reviewing information, looking at different proposals that might impact whales and dolphins, and determining the best course of action on how to respond. So it's not super glamorous, but it is really important. How are these different policies made? So what is the process to get us there? Policy is not super public friendly. Again, it can be intimidating and scary, but it is ultimately a public process. There are, of course, exceptions to every rule. This is not how everything is made, but this is the most common pathway to getting laws and regulations in place. And what usually happens is that elected officials will kind of set these broader goals and mandates through passing laws. And then specific agencies are in charge of filling in the details and figuring out how to meet those goals through specific regulations. I kind of think of it like maybe right now you're deciding we're going to have dinner at 7 o'clock tonight, and you've just set a goal. And then whoever in your household is in charge of actually making dinner, maybe it's you, maybe it's a team effort, maybe it's a partner, your parents. They have to figure out, okay, well, what exactly are we going to have for dinner? What are the ingredients that we need? When do we need to start cooking? Who's going to set the table to make all of that happen at 7 o'clock? So they're figuring out the specific details and the step-by-step process of how to get there. And at each of these different stages, the public is involved. So you can reach out directly to your elected officials or to these different agencies and share your thoughts and submit comments and give them your input. So as I said, it's totally a public-driven process. And expert groups like WDC also weigh in on those processes and connect with people to tell you what's going on and when and where you can weigh in. And ideally, the end result is happy and safe and protected whales. All right, so I just did throw a lot of terms at you. So we are gonna kind of break it down into who's who when we're talking about who is creating policy. First, your senators and representatives, your MOCs, members of Congress. You might hear us refer to them as elected officials, lawmakers, legislators. They're one step of the process. And again, that can be at the federal level in Congress or at the state level with your state elected officials. And then we're going to jump into a lot of acronyms because whenever you're talking about policy and government, there are always a lot of really fun acronyms in play and some of that terminology and words that can be a little intimidating when we're throwing out a lot of abbreviations and you kind of get lost in the letters. But these are the basic ones for marine mammal policy and what we generally work under the most. There's a lot of different agencies as part of the US government. They are in charge of specific areas and oversee specific things. We're obviously not going to talk about all of them. I'm just going to mention the ones that interact the most with marine mammals and with habitat. So are the ones that we're weighing in with for our policy work mostly. So we have the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. And as part of that, National Marine Fisheries Service, we would refer to them as NMFS or NOAA Fisheries. And they are in charge of overseeing all marine resources, so fish and wildlife, to ensure sustainability and to work on protection and recovery of marine species. The Fish and Wildlife Service is kind of in charge of similar things, but on land, but that can impact ecosystem and habitat issues for whales and dolphins. And Fish and Wildlife Service is also in charge of managing national monuments, and there's a few ocean-based national monuments, so they oversee those. The Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, or BOEM, is kind of a newish agency. They started in 2010, and they oversee management of things like oil and gas development and renewable energy development in offshore waters. So obviously that's a process that we want to weigh in on and make sure that whales and dolphins are protected as those activities are going on. And each of these agencies also have kind of a state component that is in charge of things happening in the state itself. So there might be a Department of Fish and Wildlife or Fish and Wildlife Commission in certain states, or marine resources. So again, a lot of things can happen at multiple levels at state and federal. And I know that was a lot. So whale brain break time. Pretty picture of our northern resident orcas hanging out and having fun in the water. We're going to take a deep breath and just let those acronyms kind of wash over you. All right, so the basics. Again, we know that policy can be really intimidating and scary. It can be a really uncomfortable thing to weigh in on issues with your members of Congress or with these agencies. But the important thing to remember is that they're there for you. This whole process, everything in policy is driven for and by the people. They're in charge of protecting all of these resources and protecting whales and dolphins to ultimately help us. So they are answering to you, and you don't have to be an expert to get involved. You don't have to have a whole bunch of scientific information or resources. That's what expert groups like WDC are for. You just have to be a caring individual and be willing to speak up for whales and dolphins. And this can happen through comment opportunities. Every time agencies propose a new rule or a change to something, it goes through a public comment process. You can send them written comments. You can get up and testify at a hearing and share your thoughts in person, or you can reach out directly to your members of Congress. And again, they're accountable to you, so don't be afraid to tell them what you want, even if it's just as simple as, hey, I really care about whales and dolphins. I think they're really important, and I would like you to do more to protect them. They hear you and they listen to you, and they take that into account when they are figuring out and setting policy. So yeah, make sure, just don't let it scare you and don't let it overwhelm you. So some of the most common laws that we work under, I'm just going to cover a few today and talk about what they do and how we use them at WDC. So the first one, probably the most important one, Marine Mammal Protection Act, the MMPA, which is the key environmental law for marine mammals and was one of the first laws to provide protection to an entire class of species. So it protects all marine mammals from porpoises to polar bears. And yes, polar bears are considered a marine mammal. It recognizes how important the ecosystem and the habitat is for marine mammals. So it knows that they need certain things to survive and focuses on protecting that as well. And the MMPA protects individual marine mammals from take, which can include harassment, any disturbing of natural behavior like feeding or traveling or socializing, and from direct harm, so injury, capture, or killing. And any activity that might violate the MMPA, like trying to import a captive held whale or dolphin into the US, permitting seismic testing or oil drilling, that does require a permit from the MMPA, which includes a public input process. So that's where you would submit comments, and WDC can review applications, present additional information, and argue our case to ensure that whales and dolphins are not harmed during any of these processes. And where you can weigh in and say either, you know, I'm really concerned about this, I want more protective measures in place, or I think this is a bad idea, don't do it. Another opportunity for public input. Okay, that was some more abbreviations and acronyms. So here's happy humpback whale, safely protected by the MMPA, enjoying life because that law is in place. And another one of the important laws that we work under a lot is the Endangered Species Act, the ESA, which is another landmark law that protects the most vulnerable species. So the ones that are at risk of extinction or disappearing forever, which is obviously bad, and we don't want any species to disappear forever. The ESA, like the MMPA, recognizes how important ecosystems are and the habitat of different species. And so it outlines both how to recognize that a species is most at risk and how to recover them. So how to make sure that they have what they need to survive and to thrive and exist into the future. I like to think of this as the extra special whales law, and it applies to some of the species and populations that we work on a lot for WDC. So North Atlantic right whales and the southern resident orca population are both listed under the ESA. They're both very vulnerable populations and need a little bit of extra protection and extra attention to make sure that they have everything they need to survive. And the last one I'm going to talk about today is the big one, the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA. Definitely the most fun acronym to turn into its own word. And NEPA makes sure that all parts of the federal government consider the environmental impacts of any major action. So everything from building a new dam to building a highway or a new factory in your city. If any of that has happened and you've weighed in on that process, you have participated in NEPA. If you signed our recent petition about southern resident orcas and dams in the Columbia River, you are participating in NEPA. That was part of a review to look at the management of those dams and how they affect the environment around them. So it's already something that you might be participating in without even knowing it. NEPA is really important because it has a lot of transparency and a lot of opportunities for the public to participate in this review process. There's multiple steps for providing input and comment, and they have to, the government has to consider all of that input and use that in their decision-making process. And the law recognizes that we all have a shared responsibility to preserve and enhance the environment and make sure that it's still here for future generations. So it's really important, and we use that a lot in our policy work and try to involve all of you as much as possible. All right, NEPA is a big law, so we're gonna have a big brain break and look at more nice, lovely pictures of orcas. This is a southern resident foraging for some salmon right offshore of San Juan Island. So again, making sure that this orca has food available is something that can happen through the NEPA process, and looking at what kinds of projects might impact food availability for southern resident orcas. So it is ultimately a team effort. This is how it all comes together. There's a lot going on, and it can be really hard to keep track of everything. There are so many things with the potential to impact whales and dolphins and their habitat. So it's our job at WDC to work with our partners to share the information with all of you to help you be aware of what's going on, how it might impact whales and dolphins, and when and where we need lots of people to weigh in on these rules and regulations. So we will put together campaigns and action alerts and get it out and shared with you. And that can vary based on the issue and how it's being reviewed. Sometimes we have a petition when we want to gather a lot of support and say that we had thousands and thousands of people speak up for whales and dolphins and weigh in on this particular issue. Sometimes individual voices are more important, and so we might provide some specific talking points and then point you in the direction of where you can go to submit comment. Especially with elected officials, they always want to hear from individuals, so it's always a good idea to give them your own perspective and input. And you always have the option to do all of the above. You can sign our petition, you can submit your own comments, you can also reach out to your elected officials. There's nothing that limits you from weighing in multiple times and just sharing your own thoughts on an issue. The more people that we have speaking up for whales and dolphins, the better our chances are of getting these stronger protections in place and meeting that WDC goal of a world where every whale and dolphin is safe and free. So speaking up for them, always a benefit and always helpful. And just an example of some of the different ways that we work in policy and what we've been up to lately. Save the Right Whale Act is a law in Congress right now, and we have been encouraging people to reach out to their MOCs, their members of Congress, and ask them to help support this law that will direct some additional funding and resources to helping to protect right whales. Back in December, we did a petition to the National Marine Fisheries Service, NMFS, which oversees protection of marine mammals, asking them to expand critical habitat or protected home for the southern resident orcas. And sometimes we even need to speak up for these laws and regulations themselves and make sure that the laws are protected and are applied to the best that they can be. So we recently had a common opportunity to protect NEPA itself. And we do have an option on our website right now to raise your right hand to become a right whale first responder and respond to these action alerts and notifications to help right whales. So you can sign up and become a right whale defender and help us respond to some of these common opportunities. So back to the essential of what policy is and what it does. It helps create positive change for whales and dolphins, and we need to work on improving policy, which all depends on you. So you are helping to hold agencies and members of Congress accountable for paying attention to the things that you care about, like whales and dolphins and their habitat. And none of this could happen without your support and without all of you weighing in and helping WDC to allow us to weigh in on these issues. And there's two key takeaway points, is that you don't have to be an expert. You don't need to, send in comments with a lot of citations and references. You just have to care and be willing to speak up. And everyone can participate. There's absolutely no limit. Again, you don't have to be an expert. It doesn't matter where you're from or where you live. You have the ability to share your concerns with agencies and with elected officials and be an advocate for whales and dolphins. And if you're interested in jumping in even further to the policy pool, we do have a section on our website called Policy Briefs, and we go into more detail on some of the stuff we've talked about today and in other issues, and you can learn about some of the other tools in our policy toolbox that we use to help protect whales and dolphins. And again, none of what we do, none of this policy work or this overarching effort to create positive change for whales and dolphins would be possible without people supporting WDC and joining us and speaking up for whales and dolphins. Just people being interested and concerned and ready to jump in when we send out a call to action is hugely impactful. So a big thank you to everybody for helping us protect whales and dolphins, and for keeping up with us and joining us on these webinars. All right, I'm going to stop the screen share and see if we have any questions. Hopefully we've kept everyone with us during policy talk. Again, I know it can be a lot, but policy is really important, and again, helps with the entire goal of WDC in creating a world where whales and dolphins are safe and free. So we've got some people watching from New Jersey. Hello. I'm over on the West Coast, so I hope you guys have nice weather on the East Coast. All right, if you have any questions, again, shoot us an email, contact@whales.org. You can post on this video. We'll answer questions after the fact too. And again, I know policy can be a lot and it can be intimidating and confusing and complicated. So we are here to make it easier for you. So if you have any questions, check out the policy briefs page, reach out to us directly, and we'll do our best to answer them and keep everyone involved as much as we can. All right. Well, thanks again, everybody, for tuning in and for watching a webinar from us. We are going to keep these going for the near future. So Tuesdays and Thursdays, keep an eye out over the weekend for what topics we'll be covering next week. And if you have anything that you would really like to see us talk about, any questions about whales and dolphins, if you want more policy, let me know. Yeah, any topics you'd like to see, just give us a holler and we'll put something together. These have been really fun and a really good way to stay connected with everybody. All right, there's no questions coming in that I can see. But again, anything, let us know. And thanks again. Stay safe, wash your hands, take care of each other, get out and do that 50 for 50 challenge if you haven't yet. And thank you so much, everybody. We'll see you later.